Welcome to Unconventional Success, where we are rewriting the rules for female solopreneurs. I'm your host, Tiffany Dawson, a business and mindset coach. I help women who value freedom to earn the income they need to facilitate the lifestyle they want. I'll share interviews with successful female founders and my own tips on how to build a bulletproof mindset, make your own rules for your reality, and think strategically about your business so you can earn free-flowing revenue while spending quality time with your family. Remember, you can do life and business in a totally unconventional way and be wildly successful at the same time. The only person you need permission from is you. To another episode of Unconventional Success. I've been so excited to introduce to you my next expert guest on the podcast, Amy Goodall, who is a brand strategist and designer. How are you today, Amy?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Loving the sunshine that we've got. And I just energized for September. I love September.
Oh, amazing. And before we jumped on the recording, you were telling me you just came off a boot camp training session.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I don't have to do much with my arms because we kicked off with 100 chest to floor burpees. I didn't think if someone had told me beforehand it was that's what I had to do, I would have said not possible, but we kind of got through it.
Congrats. That's a huge
Thank
win
you.
for the week.
Yeah. Didn't really wash my hair afterwards, but you know.
Before we get started, I'd love to hear a bit more from you as to what you do specifically as a brand strategist and designer. Who are the people you help and how do you help them?
Yes, so I would say I tend to work with women, and it tends to be people who are doing something in a different way. So I call them pioneer business founders, and quite a lot of the women I speak with, they're in a job, but they know that they're an expert in their field, or they've got this amazing idea that they want to launch out on their own. So, and I don't know if you've ever been in that position. It's quite a tricky transition position. But by giving them the branding that they need, then they can move quicker, basically, with doing their own thing. But the thing that really attracts me to any project is when someone says to me, "I want to look completely different," or I'm just I'm in a corporate environment and I want it to be colourful and fun. So that's So when your podcast Unconventional Success, I was like, that sounds like me all over it.
Yeah. And I totally resonate with what you were saying before. To start off with, and for businesses who want to just hit the ground running, instead of spending all of that time researching design, especially if that's not your strong point like mine. Like
Yeah.
I'm an ex-engineer. I'm
Oh
not
wow, I didn't realise
great
that.
with design or anything. So to have someone on hand who can guide you and just quickly get you to a point where your brand looks and feels the way that you want to, that must be so energizing for you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people they think because they're going off to do their own thing, that puts them in a lesser position than they really are at. Just because they're doing it on their own, they kind of forget, oh, but I've got all this immense expertise, I've developed this incredible product that I know gets results. It's just because they're not in that safety net of working for a company, they feel that, oh, I'm not quite ready for branding yet. And I think, I just wish more people would just have that confidence and belief in their own ability. And also, I just want to remind people that, that's such a critical part of success and the speed at which you can progress, and then attract the right people, which is going to make your working life that much easier. And then it's snowball. I was thinking last night, getting the right designs, it's like the butterfly effect or a snowball. It just has this kind of exponentially more far-reaching effect.
I do want to delve into your expertise in branding and give people some of the advice that you wouldn't normally get. Like, I think we usually think about branding and people talk about branding colors and how to select them, but it's definitely more, there's definitely more to that in terms of strategy and design. But before we dive into that, I really want to uncover some of your own personal story to get to where you are now as a branding designer. You were telling me a bit before that you did not take a conventional path there. Please
No,
tell me
not by a
more.
long shot. So I I had no idea really what I wanted to be or do when it came to choosing university, but I knew I loved drawing, painting. I did art A level, but I wasn't ready to go to uni and I didn't want to travel. So I, with a lot of kind of, I was railing against my parents as well. They wanted me to do physics and maths and go and be an architect or a doctor or whatever. But I just was like, no, I'm art is my thing. So I did an art foundation course and then I did a degree which was in design.
Mm.
But at the end of that degree, there was just no way I was ready to be a designer at all. I think, um, anyone who can put their hands up and go, I'm a designer, I'm a brand designer when they're 19 or 20, 21, whatever, full respect to them. And also, I was obsessed with tennis. I don't know kind of where it came from, but age 14, I started playing. I was no good, but I was at the tennis club. I lived there. I worked there. I was a ball girl at the men's challenger tournament. And I started to get to know the people who were running the events, and they felt like a family. And I loved that. I absolutely thrive in community, um, as do you. And I'm thrilled to be part of your community. Um,
Amazing.
and so it was tennis that was really driving me. And I just literally rang the LTA, wrote to them, and battered down their door until they gave me a job, like a work experience job, which was based in Bristol. And that was in Clifton. So I did a month working for free, and then they were like, "Okay, fine, fair enough. We'll pay you. We'll start paying you. You've done a good job." So it was just tennis administration. But then I still kept writing to because it was Queen's Club in London. That's where I wanted to work, and I wanted to be doing the bigger tournaments, the exciting ones. And eventually, I just kind of like on one side of the story, I feel like I battered them down, but I think I just worked my way to that position. That's maybe then more positive spin on it. And I ended up working for 10 years in tennis. So that was incredible. But after 10 years, I realized that I just wasn't growing. And it wasn't even necessarily a conscious decision because I wouldn't have said, I had this big kind of growth development mindset at that point, but I just knew I was stagnating and not particularly
Mm.
learning. So have you ever heard of Rally International?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so they do like projects for youngsters, so young adults, not kids, out in Malaysia, which was for me the most scariest foreign sounding place at the time. But whilst we were going through the change management, I felt there was something in me, obviously, that was just going, get a backup, get something else in place that you might want to do. So my best mate was like, I want to travel, let's do a Rally International like test weekend. So I went along and I did the test weekend, which was honestly the most brutal thing I've ever done. I had to swim across a lake with no clothes or just pants, and carry my backpack sort of across. We trekked all night. We literally they kept us awake for 48 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. And again, if you told me that any of that before I went and did it, I would have just laughed in your face and thought, "There's just no way." So at the end of that, I was like, I can almost like forget that now because they're never going to think that I'm good enough for that or hardy enough for that. But lo and behold, about 2 weeks later, I got an acceptance place. Like you have a position as a project manager in Malaysia, in Borneo,
Amazing.
and I was like, oh shit, okay, okay. Um, and then it kind of coincided with I'd been appealing against, so I'd had a letter from the LTA saying your job doesn't exist anymore. You have to apply for a new job. So I appealed and appealed and appealed. And I remember getting a letter on my desk and it said, "You've won your appeal. Here's your new job." And I was like, okay, but Borneo, stay in tennis. Scary, terrifying, don't know anybody. All your lovely colleagues. That was like a family. It was a
Yeah.
really privileged job in London, Queen's Club, meeting tennis players all the time. And I walked around the car park and I made one phone call to one person that I really respected their opinion of. And he just said, "Just follow what's in your heart." And
Mm.
I was like, okay, well, I love tennis. I love the LTA. I'm going to stay. And then I walked one more time around the car park and something changed. And I just walked in and I just went into my boss and said, "I'm leaving." Yeah. And at the time I was like, oh God, I'm going to cry or faint or something. I don't know what I've just done. And he looked at me and he was like, "Are you sure? Honestly, are you joking me? You've just fought tooth and nail for this job." And I said, "But I've got a place in the jungle," which
Yeah.
sounds ridiculous. The monkeys need me, uh, and the kids need me, man. Um, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm really sorry. I just need to go and do different." And then rally. Did you take a year out or anything? Or
No, I don't know where I've heard of rally. I did do half a year, like one semester of exchange in Malaysia when I was
okay,
at uni.
ah,
I don't know whether I heard about it
yeah.
then.
And they're incredible. They were it was I had the most fundamentally life affirming and like just life altering experience. And I think all the other guys who were on the expedition laugh at me because they're like, "Oh, you are still banging on about rally." But I just think it just changed me,
Mm.
everything in me, and it taught me a lot of really important lessons that have led to where I am today. So that's why I like to bang on about it. Um,
Yeah, it must have been such a life-changing and eye-opening experience to be dropped into a completely different part of the world, different landscape, different culture, doing something completely different. And yeah, did it give you that sense of, I don't know, because every time I've like moved away from a country or moved to a different environment, I've learned something about myself. Is that what you felt as well?
Yeah, I so when I first got there, I was quite tearful a lot of the time to begin with, and we had 2 weeks of training where they literally trained us up in soft skills and hard skills. So it was, here's how to deal with someone if they come to you with a serious problem or like serious past trauma, because some of the kids we were working with were um, there was a lot of privileged people there from the UK, but then there were some from other charities who were given these free places,
Mm.
and they were there because they kind of needed to be away from their home situations.
Yeah.
Um, and there were just during this training, I was like, guys, are you sure that I should stay? Because I don't think I'm coping very well. And they were teaching me how to use a machete, how to rescue someone who'd injured themselves and get them up a mountain. Or like I was like 2 weeks. Seriously, in 2 weeks, you're expecting me to keep people alive in this kind of way. Um, and when we got out to the place, it was Ramadan. So all the people there were very tired, very low energy, and it was difficult to speak to them. And we were posted into this village and we had to kind of build rapport and work out what we were going to do on 3 phases of the project with these kids who were from all different walks of life. And the guy we had one person who was sort of, he'd lived out there for a long time. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was like Indiana Jones. And he said, "By the way, don't let any of the kids in the river because you've seen the crocodiles." No joke, massive crocodiles. And that's where we washed every day. So I just had a bit of a meltdown and I went to the expedition leader and I said, "I'm really sorry, but I think I'm going to have to go home." And they were like, "Are you joking? You're one of the most you're one of the people who holds everybody together and gets their spirits up, and like, this is why we chose you to come out here, because that night that we trekked when you were on the test weekend, you kept everyone singing. That's exactly the sort of person we want here. So yeah, and then I gradually just I stopped trying too hard, because I was also trying to get everyone to like me, and I realized that as soon as I relaxed and just thought, I don't have to fill every second with chat like I'm doing now. uh,
This is a
sorry.
podcast, so that is absolutely
Yeah, I've just,
needed.
and again, I get so passionate about this story. I just kind of relaxed, and that's when I really started to make some amazing connections with the people we were working with. And at the end of the expedition, when they all wrote in my book, that it was like so emotional, and I
Aw.
realized I'd had this great effect on these kids, and I realized I was a leader, which it's taken me a long time to be able to say that as well, because even back then I don't think I could say I'm a leader, but having those leadership skills has just helped me in everything that's come after.
Yeah. And I guess like I do also still want to join the dots from how you
Yeah.
got there to
So
branding.
yeah,
But so far what I'm hearing is that even from a very young age, you said from the age of 14 you got obsessed with tennis and you just started working there. You it seems like you always had this drive to follow the thing that you were interested in or passionate about, no matter what other people were telling you. So your parents
100%.
might have said like, this is a dead end job, or like, where is this even going to take you? Even after doing your design degree, you're like, I don't know how to get into design, so I'm just going to do what I love. I really love that, because I feel like society often tells us, make the logical choice, look at the data, look at the facts,
Yeah,
follow what makes sense.
yeah,
But then we lose the ability when we become adults to really listen to our intuition, to do the things that light us up. And this is when we become these adults with all these resentments in life
yeah.
and feel like we're absolutely stuck. And how did we get into this 9 to 5 job that we really hate?
Exactly, that we don't want to leave. And also trust our decision-making skills,
Yeah.
and trust that we know the best thing for ourselves, and to just kind of drown out the noise a little bit. Because I've had, if someone ever says to me, "Oh, I wouldn't do that," are you sure? Are you sure that's good for you and your situation? And it's almost like lighting a fire under me to make that thing then happen,
Mm,
because I just kind of think, yeah, it's just it leads you on the path that you're meant to be on.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you did Rally International. You got all these lovely messages from people you worked with as you were leaving. What next? Like, how did you get from there to where you are today?
Yeah, so it was quite hard coming back. In fact, it was way harder adjusting back to being a young professional again in the UK than it was going out there, because I just stepped out of the flow.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't know what to do. So I just took any job, which was working in a recruitment agency. But again, I have this kind of, even though I knew I didn't like it, and they were very obsessed with me wearing a suit. And it began to feel like the only thing that was important to them is if I wore a suit or not. And I was like, there's more to me than just wearing a suit. Um, so but I threw myself into it, because I thought I have to make the best of this. Then I realized that my passion was fitness at the time. So still kind of tennis, but also I'd got quite into running. And I just loved the gym. So I thought, well, if you love the gym, find a job at the gym. And I realized that there was a membership retention position, which you got to organize events where you invited new people in to come and look at the gym. So I was like, I've done events, it's kind of sporty fitness, I get free gym membership, amazing. So I just thought, right, I'll throw myself all into that, and that's great. And then I think I spoke to somebody who was in an agency, and they needed someone in experiential marketing, which kind of was like events. So I had a job there where I honestly, have you ever worked in a marketing agency or had any?
No, I haven't.
Most of the time, I did not know what anyone was talking about. And obviously I learned a lot there, and I know a lot more now. But if you've not done marketing, it's all 3-letter acronyms. And I was sitting in meetings, and then it was so funny because if anyone mentioned the word event, everyone would just look at me, and I was like, I don't know what to say. Like, what? I don't know what to say. It's like, that's the buzzword. Amy's in the events team. Just look at her.
Yeah.
But I gradually realised that I was kind of interested in the brand aspect of, and I was working for a team that worked on Jaguar Land Rover dealership marketing. So that was interesting to me. But then I became aware of another company that, again, I would say is quite a pivot. It was a fundamental part of my career. And they were a brand experience agency that started out as a bar kind of production company called Clink Clink. Have you heard of them? They're a Bristol company.
No, I haven't heard of them before.
Small but perfectly formed. And I went into there with some of the experiential knowledge, and I helped them grow their account, which at the time the big account was Moët and Chandon, which was fascinating. So working with French people up in London, and it was exciting and a bit glamorous. And my first job was designing or helping to design and then build a Moët marquee at Royal Ascot. So quite exciting stuff. And it was that really that I think brought everything together, because I started to do little bits of design work, and I just had to know the brand inside out. And I was fascinated about what goes into making a brand.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I then got there.
Oh, amazing. That's funny.
Yeah.
I've worked on the building at Ascot before as an
Have you?
engineer. Yes.
Nice.
We
It's
did some
amazing.
refurbishment works there.
Really cool.
Yeah. Okay. So you went into branding through kind of like the necessity of getting a job after you came back, really, and
Yeah.
you went into this type of work and realized you loved the branding side of things. How did you go from employed to self-employed as a brand strategist and designer?
So it was as soon as I learned how to use the software. So I went and sat with a local agency, because we had this need that we needed someone in house who could do bits of artworking. So really simple stuff, layout stuff. And I knew that I just needed to learn Illustrator. And as soon as I learned that, I was like, oh, now I could design my own stuff. And I was talking to the guys at the agency who were teaching me, and they were like, "Oh yeah, just get yourself a profile on People Per Hour. They're a freelance website, and just start doing little made-up projects. Just think of the kind of brands you would like to work on, and start just fabricating a brief, and then uploading logos there. And then you can then apply for little logo design jobs on People Per Hour." And I started applying for these, and I would get a couple, and I was charging like 50 quid for a logo,
Yeah.
or even less, because I thought, well, 50 quid, that's all right for a logo. I love logo design. And then it just kind of went from there.
Yeah.
And I began to build up my clients. And then it was around 2018, I think, so having a kid impacted it as well. Obviously that's life altering, right? But I did hypnotherapy, a lot of it, and I really honestly think it awoke my creativity again. And I was like, I don't want to just think creatively, I want to be designing. So I think because I was then got super into that, and I was like, any spare hour of the evening, and just before the pandemic, I was at a point where I had quite a bit of work, plus the Moët and Chandon account it was just changing, and we came to an agreement that the job had changed, my job had changed quite a lot, and my position wasn't really quite so necessary anymore. So we just kind of agreed that I'd be made redundant, which I was absolutely fine with. And then I had a conversation with some friends. I was like, maybe I need to find another job, but I was just like, no, I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it. So, and yeah, I've kind of not looked back. How long have you worked for yourself?
So I've just had my business's 4th birthday.
Okay. Oh,
last
nice.
week. So yeah, 4 years in business, a few pivots and changes along the
Yeah.
way. So I started out as a leadership coach for women in science, tech, engineering, and maths.
Oh, wow. Gosh, that's
And yeah, like a couple of minor pivots within that niche, and then changed over to focus more on helping female business owners, because I just think that with most coaches, you want to be helping a past version of yourself. So
yeah,
it's
that's
ever
it.
evolving, and I see myself pivoting a few more times in the future as well. But
Yeah.
that's the beauty of having your own business, right? You
Oh,
can
definitely.
change it up and serve the people who you feel most connected with at the time.
Yeah, and I think so. I didn't start out as a brand designer as such. I launched my own brand, which so my Instagram account started out as it was at I should be. And the kind of idea behind it was, I remember when I had my baby, everyone or certain people were saying, "Oh, that's it, now for you, life is just you'll just be covered in baby's snot and vomit, and you'll have to get comfortable slacks that like never wear anything nice again, and
People are
you
so helpful when you have a baby, aren't they?
oh yeah, it's like, are you just like, is there some good stuff too?" And I
Yeah.
just thought, no. And again, it's that kind of inside something inside me. I'm like, no, I'm going to launch my own self confidence boosting brand. And I just thought I want to put my designs on sweatshirts and t shirts and prints. I started off by just posting inspirational quotes. And then I think someone said to me, are you selling this as a print? And it was in that, it was a bit slightly after the massive boom in, do you remember Selfish Mother?
Yeah, I
The
do.
mother, yeah. So I
Yeah.
had one of those sweatshirts, I think, from my husband when Ellie was born, and I was like, "That's it. That's what I can do." So, and I think a lot of people jumped on that bandwagon. And as I got into it, a few years into it, I thought, yeah, I had some coaching, and I was trying to thinking I wanted to grow it, and they were saying, what's your dream for the brand? And I was like, oh, I want to be in John Lewis, and I want to be in all these kind of stores. And then I was thinking about it. There's something that's just ringing a bit hollow in my own voice. Do I
Mm.
really want that? Is that on? And I had a real kind of moment where I thought, that's not it. What really, really fires me is, like you said, helping past me that I can see in other people.
Yeah.
And I know what to do to get uh, for someone who has an amazing business idea, product, or I can see that they're this amazing person with a lot of value to give, and they're an expert, and I know what to do to get them to the place they want to be. So
Yes.
it's working with people to help that transformation that I just love it.
Yeah, yeah, that's so amazing. And like really cool that you started that brand and realized actually no, this isn't what I wanted. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in other people's version of success,
Yeah,
because I guess if you're being asked by people, "Oh, can you sell this as a print or can you put this on a t-shirt?" then automatically you think, "Okay, well the next step is to sell this in the big
yeah,
department stores and
yeah,
to get fame and success from that." But yeah, I love that you really paused to have a think about what was it that you wanted to put out in the world. And that was to help these brands who obviously had expertise or a really great product to share in the world that would help people in their
yeah,
day-to-day lives, but just couldn't get there because the visuals and how they were presenting themselves online and in print, I guess, just
yeah.
wasn't working for them.
Exactly. I mean, if you've originated a product, and I've worked with a few recently that they've got this incredible product, but it's just like until you've got the visual identity, you can't write an investor pitch. You
Mm.
can't go to a store and say, I want to get my product on your shelves. If you've just got a little bottle of this liquid that could be anything, even though we know I've tried it, I've tested it, and it's amazing. It's helped my skin. So now you need the visual identity to get that to market. Basically, that's essentially what I do with the product brand owners that I help.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So let's talk more on, your expertise in branding, and share with the listeners some advice that they can kind of take back to their own businesses and see how they can benefit their own brand.
Yeah, if I had a pound for every time someone came to me and said, I want to be like Apple, I'm like, yes, I'm sure you do. I am sure you do. They've had a couple of years under their belt. And when we then get into the nuts and bolts of it and I'm asking the questions, I'm like, okay, you want a logo. So a lot of people think your brand is your logo. Um, your logo is a very important part of your brand, but I like to think of a brand almost like a living entity. Or another really good way of describing it, which I read, was your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Ooh, I love
Yeah,
that.
it's great, isn't it? So it's the way you make your customers feel. It's the way
Mm.
people feel about you when you're not there. And it's really hard to put your finger on it, but it's made up of a lot of things, and it's the product, it's the customer experience, um, it's the tone of voice and the messaging and the way that the business is speaking to the audience, where they show up. If they have a physical store, Abercrombie and Hollister, if you go in, Hollister in Bristol, have you been in? It's like a nightclub, or it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like very loud, very dark. I don't know how they get away with it because you can't see the color of anything, but obviously kids love it. And everything smells of the perfume. So it's just that feeling. And I remember some of the brands that I first was aware of as a kid were surf brands. And I'm in love with everything to do with the surf world. And it's because, like Quicksilver, so that was the first T-shirt I ever had with it, where I was aware of the motif, the logo.
Yeah.
Um, and now when I see it, it's amazing the little journey my brain goes on, and that's what a brand is. Your
Mm,
logo is absolutely a critical part of that. So the way I describe a logo, it's your unique identifier. So you have to have something that you effectively stamp on everything that you put out into the world to tell people this is what I've made or this is what I do. And it's almost like a visual service level agreement. So this is what you can expect when you interact with my brand.
yeah.
And then when you're designing the visual identity, that's where you start. So everything comes from the logo.
Mm.
And then it that can inform the icons you design or the brand patterns that could then appear on packaging, that kind of thing. So it's really, really important part of the design process. But again, if someone says, um, I want a logo that's going to stand out above all other logos. I'm like, well, you have to be a little bit realistic. You can't, like, there's a lot of design in the world. You can't line them all up in a row and go one stands out more than the other. But what it is about having something that's relevant, that's got a little bit of magic in it, that tells the audience a bit about your values and brand personality. And it needs to be really simple. And then
Mm.
used over time, it's really easily identifiable and easily recognizable. So a logo is very important. And the people who say to me, oh, I don't really care what my logo looks like, it's just got to have my name on it, they're not the people I'm going to work with, because I'm like, well, if you don't care, why should I?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So
So I
yeah,
love that. I think to highlight what you said there, a logo is very important, but all it is a way in which people can identify you. So as
yeah,
soon as they see your logo, they hopefully know a little bit about your brand from seeing your logo in other places, and they'll see your logo and think, okay, I know what Amy's up to, I know what she stands for. Okay, I'm going to read this now because I know what to expect.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
that's
And for a lot of people who are thinking about branding, the first place people will go is colors, because if you go and look up um, create a brand, or how to do my branding, if you Google that, you'll probably get, okay, how to choose your branding colors, loads of emphasis on colors. But you're a brand strategist as well as a designer. What else should we be thinking about first?
so yeah, I mean, definitely color is a good place to start for a complete newbie. But when people then, when their head goes to color, they start thinking, well, what colors do I like? Oh, I love yellow, and I love beige. Yeah, because my that's how I decorate my house. You've got to take your mind out of what colors you like.
Mm.
You need to think about, what do I do and how do I want my customers to feel? And definitely look at color psychology, because your brand colors need to make your customers feel a certain way. Because, so say you're a counselor and you deal with, you're a bereavement counselor, you might love purple and yellow, but they're quite high energy colors that are just going to give off the wrong vibe. So it's thinking of the message you're going to be conveying. But then the other thing that is really, really super important is contrast,
Mm.
because I still see, and I've seen another one today, and like, I'm, if you can't read any of the writing, or you can't make out the logo, then how are you going to really remember that brand? Because the other important thing about having well contrasted and really easily recognizable branding is, I don't know, say you see somebody and you instantly can recognize it and you get a really good feel for what they do. You might not need their service, but you might have three friends who do. So you're going to refer that person because they keep showing up, they've got a great logo, and it's really easy to remember, and it conveys what they do. So it's also thinking about referring on, and just being that kind of first go-to in your head when someone goes, oh, I need a counselor, or I need a designer. I
Mm.
want to be the one that just gets remembered.
Yeah, and this is such an important point that I talk to a lot of my clients about as well, but maybe from a slightly different perspective, but for the same purpose. You might say, if I'm talking to one of my clients about their social media posts and their strategy behind that, and they are feeling really discouraged because they're not getting any engagement, or they're not getting any they're not converting any leads from a specific post, I always say, just remember they have friends who might need this service, or they might need this service later on. So
Yeah,
you always need to be thinking outside of the immediate payback of something that you're putting out there, and that is to do with brand as well.
100%. You need to be building the brand so that, and really consistently over time, so that when that person is ready, or when they're ready to refer you, it's all there. Because I
Mm.
think you can get really definitely caught up in that, and it freezes you, and then you stop posting and you stop
Yeah.
showing up with that energy, and you just need to keep kind of pushing through that
Mm.
to just then absolutely think of future you, for sure.
Yeah, and you were talking about people saying, "Oh, I want to be like Apple," and thinking that just changing up your colors and getting a nice logo is going to get you there. But we have to remember that, as you said, Apple's been there for years and years, and everyone knows that Apple's got this huge story behind it. They
Yeah,
know about Steve Jobs and how he started, and how he's like obsessed with design rather than other tech companies that are obsessed with the tech. So
yeah,
everyone understands that it's all supposed to be a very seamless experience. You're buying more than just a phone or a laptop. You're buying this whole
yeah,
ecosystem in which you buy into, and almost a lifestyle.
yeah.
Uh, so that is all conveyed by a little logo now, because you've had years and years of exposure of that.
Exactly. Yeah. So because when you look at Apple's branding, they really, other than it's all quite clean and white, so that is in itself a visual treatment. It's very clean, and that you go into the shops and it's the same. But they have these also kind of um no, what was I going to say? No, in terms of actual branding elements, they don't have a brand pattern, they don't have loads of icons, they just have the apple.
Mm.
But exactly what you said, there's just everything else that's gone into it that's got them to that place. And Apple, again, are a really interesting brand, because I can get really annoyed by them on a day like today. I'm like, my calendar on my phone won't sync with my calendar on my MacBook, and it's all iCloud this and link sync that. I don't know what else to do. but I just love the products. They feel like reassuring, and I've since the very first iPod came out, I had that, and I took it to Borneo with me, and it was like my comfort blanket, my partner. It held all my music that made me feel happy and connected and joyful. And when I was on my own, I had my music, so that was it. They just take you on a journey and an experience, and that's what anyone who is selling a product or giving a service, you need to be providing an experience for your customers, and your visuals play a really, really important part in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that has helped Apple and Nike and all the other brands, plus smaller personal brands as well. The one thing that kind of gets them that reputation years down the line is that sense of repetition and consistency. You know, they're always kind of, there's this quiet noise in the background. They're always there. They're never really like pushing something onto you, but you just know,
Yeah,
okay, Apple's there all the time. Like Nike's there all the time. I see
yeah,
their logos every now and then. And when I need a new pair of shoes, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get some Air Forces.
yeah, yeah. I think consistency is massively important. Flipping that on its head, if your branding's not quite right, then you're consistently attracting the wrong people,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the whole goal of um, doing what you do and building the brand is you want to attract the right people who are going to respect what you do, not bargain with you and try and push down your prices, and that are going to have the right type of project that you're the expert in, so you can deliver, and they're going to be really happy. It just makes everything really cohesive and seamless. But
Mm.
if you've got the wrong look, or your branding is very confusing, and it's a kind of disjointed customer journey, and your Instagram looks completely different to your website, so that's confusing, then you're going to attract people who aren't willing to pay a premium for your services, because subconsciously you're giving off the vibe that, not that you don't care about it, but that it's just not something you've prioritized. I mean, personally, and I love shopping. I especially clothes and shoes and trainers are my. If you see my latest post, I've got an amazing
I
new pair of
did.
trainers.
I love that one.
Aren't they? Have you ever heard of Flower Mountain?
I hadn't before I saw your post.
So I saw them online. I was like, right, look at their website. And then I read their story and I was like, okay, oh my God, they are just beautiful. And I
Oh my
love
God.
it. Oh my God, couldn't get them quick enough. And then they turn up, and the bottom of the pile of all the good things about that is they're a really well made shoe that I know is I'm going to wear and wear and wear, and they're really comfortable. But everything else before that that's gone on, I'm just like, it's in my heart already. And that's the magic of really clever branding. You've got this story of how the brand came to be, and it's really evident. And all these beautiful little design details, the little flowers that are kind of embossed, and little tiny bits of text that are in a really beautiful font. And their logo is just anything Japanese style for me as well. I'm like, they've just got this amazing, and also fusion design where it's pretty florals with edgy urban
Yeah.
contemporary cool. That for me is like, oh God, I'll just buy everything I can from you. Um, so again, I've forgotten where I was going with this, but yeah, if you're consistently not getting it right, then you're just going to be consistently frustrated.
Yeah. So, what I'm hearing a lot from you, and you've mentioned it a couple of times as well, but I want to highlight branding is not just about the visuals, it's about how a brand makes you feel. So, you were
Yeah,
describing your experience with Flower, is it Flower Mountain?
Flower Mountain.
Yeah, you were describing your experience there, and you were talking all about how it was making you feel like you fell in love with it before you even saw the shoe, and the experience that it took you through.
Yeah,
And visuals play a huge part in that. But in order to get the visuals right, you need to first craft how is it that you want your customers to feel when
yeah,
they look at you, when they work with you, when they speak to you? What is your personality that you want to get out there?
exactly. And that's why. So, in the like my main offer that I work with clients on, we do strategy first. So it's a really deep dive. It's like an interview where we go through everything. And I write the brief because in my early days, I used to say, send me the brief. And then quite often it was hard to deliver, because just because you've got this great idea for a business doesn't mean you know how to write a creative brief. And really, it's my job as the designer to do that. So it's an interview, and often people are more comfortable to talk. So it's easier, isn't it, to get lost in
Yeah.
telling your story. But there would be things maybe they wouldn't include if they were just typing it. So, and I'm like, yes, just tell me everything. And then we really start to look at the business or the brand as a person. What are the what are the personality traits? If this brand was a person, where would it shop? Where does it show up? What do you do in your spare time? What are your aspirations? The other thing is, where do you want this business to go? What are the growth ambitions? Because it might be that you start with one product, but you've got an idea for a whole new product line down the road. So again, flexibility is something I always keep really, really forefront of mind when I'm designing. So if you're launching a product, chances are it won't just be one. So you need some kind of visual language to help differentiate the products, but also make it really clear that they're all part of you.
Yeah.
And for you, or I just worked with a brand photographer who is running her own kind of club membership group, where people pay a certain amount and can have X number of photos a month. That needs its own little sub brand within a bigger brand. So flexibility is key, because a lot of people, they'll get some design work done and then they get one JPEG at the end of it and they realize they can't do anything. Like, you can hardly use it anywhere because it's not the right shape or size, and you haven't got any vectors, so you can't print them. Like, I've started doing some posts about file types. Honestly, it's one of the things that confuses people the most. So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to kind of help educate my audience so that people understand that branding is a really complex process, but that's why I just want to make it super easy, because when you launch a business, everything can be majorly overwhelming. So my aim is to kind of smooth the journey for you as much as possible.
Yeah, and starting a business can be so overwhelming anyway. And if you're not a design person, if you've got no idea about how to start with your visuals or what kind of fonts to use and what colors and whatnot, just to be able to take that away is so useful. So I guess in terms of people starting a brand, we kind of talked about how lots of people will jump straight to color, but actually what you do is, before you even think about color, you start thinking about and interviewing your clients on, okay, what's the brand personality? What's the feeling that you want to convey? What kinds of products and services are you going to produce in future,
Yeah,
potentially? And then once you've got that, then you can start thinking about color as a visual starting point. So what
yeah,
colors will match the personality that you're trying to convey?
yeah. And it's also typography as well, and that
Yeah.
is such a crucial. But so again, this is a common like mistake that I see, where people are just using whatever fonts that probably they fancy trying out on Canva. I can spot a Canva graphic a mile away. No offense to Canva, because I appreciate that some people, they just want to do that. But if you've had your branding done, so that's one investment, that then you've got your branding kit, you can still get your own fonts uploaded to Canva. So you can then personalize it that much better. Um, but definitely looking at fonts and how you can be clever with typography. So I describe it as a verbal visual treatment or creative approach. And the best way that I can explain this the quickest is to talk about the brand or the charity Cystic Fibrosis. So I don't know if you've ever come across them as a brand. Um, but they had a challenge that not many people really understood what cystic fibrosis was. And it can be one of those hidden illnesses that you don't necessarily know people have got it. So their challenge was to really get the message out to as many people as possible. This is a life limiting disease, and but it's not a life sentence. So the designer, Michael Johnson, who founded Johnson Banks Agency, and I love, honestly, everything he does, or they do as an agency, he was looking at the word cystic fibrosis. And this is where, again, it's another amazing way to highlight how clever yet simple an idea can be that is then super effective. So the last two letters of fibrosis are is. So he just used two fonts. So for cystic fibrose, it's a really clean, modern, contemporary sans serif font. So a bit like Arial, but it's nicer than that. And then he changed up IS on the end in a bit more of a handwritten font. So it's got a bit more of a approachable kind of friendly feel. And then it kind of runs as a sentence. So using that, he's created a logo in effect, or a mark, a typographic word mark, that after cystic fibrosis is, you can put any words to describe what cystic fibrosis is. And then that's always in black on a yellow, two kind of yellow squares that form a holding background shape with really emotive photography. So it's super simple, but that's their framework and their kind of visual design system that they can apply to advertising a charity coffee and cake morning to raise money. Cystic fibrosis is meeting up with friends. Cystic fibrosis is a life-limiting disease. And it's just, it's really creative, but it also will make you stand out from everybody else, because it's that little bit of clever magic that, again, some designers, like, we talk about the strategy and the process, and that leads to the result, and that is one thing, but also certain people are just brilliant at having those kind of ideas.
Yeah.
And that's why you can be pretty good at putting together a graphic on Canva, but if you have that in your head to come up with that lovely little creative idea, that's when a brand designer can take your brand to a completely different level.
Yeah, absolutely. And, isn't it always the case that the simplest ideas work the best, but it takes that experience and that really creative mind to come up with the simple idea at the start. Like, simple doesn't mean easy, right?
No, exactly. There's been a process to get there that's working through the strategy. So for me, strategy, sketching, doing a mind map, like just throwing out all the words that are associated with the brand, connecting them, which ones stand out more, which are the ones we're going to focus on that we need to draw out of the logo, and then putting together mood boards, then going for a swim or a walk.
Yeah.
And it's then like, so one example of one that I did, which I'm really proud of, was I did the rebrand for a church in Bristol. And the guy who's the vicar, he used to work in marketing. So really high energy guy. And we really kind of bonded because he knew about the importance of branding, because he'd had a background in that. And he was like, right, this church has got a really crap logo. It's really boring. And a lot of our audience are maybe, kind of, we've got three churches. We want to move together to one place, but we want our church to be about community. We want more young people, more families, and we want to go out and we want to bring people in, but go out into the community. And like, they do boxes of hope. They take food boxes to people who need it. And then they've got a couple of chefs who they do about 300 meals a week for. So it's like a real kind of family. And I'm like, I want to believe in God because I want to be part of them. But I got to be part of them through the branding experience with them. And they had a campaign that, like, lead up to Christmas, the sort of campaign was God in our neighborhood. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started looking at imagery and, kind of stock imagery of people together enjoying a meal. And I was like, it's all right, but it's like really samey and there's nothing clever there. And then I went for a swim. And I was like, neighborhood, neighborhood, neighborhood. And then I just realized that the letters God, God, were in the right order in the word neighborhood.
Oh, that's so clever.
Huh? So it was like just all that's all we needed, the word neighborhood in white and the letters God in blue. And they were
Oh,
like,
brilliant.
God. And again, it was like, it's not like a life saving, incredible thing, but it's just having that idea
Yeah.
that I live for. I live for it.
Oh, I love that. That's like so
Yeah,
clever, so clever.
one of my
Um,
happiest moments.
oh, amazing, amazing. So we did an Instagram live together the other day, and
Yeah,
one of the questions that we got there was, how do I know if my brand isn't working for me? So
yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
So the first thing I'd probably say is if you are feeling very stuck about how to create your posts, um, and if you feel that you are being held back from growing your business because you're quite concerned with how it look, in your head that it needs to have a branded look and feel, but you just can't do it yourself.
Mm.
Um, that's definitely one element that I would say, because if you then just end up procrastinating and you're not kind of advancing. And then the other thing I think I would say is if you're attracting the wrong people and you're just not really particularly enjoying the work, because like I was saying before, the goal is to reach the people who need you. And that's when you're going to have the most ease throughout your business, and make those client experiences and their experience with you a lot easier and more pleasant for both parties concerned. So I think those are the two things I'd probably say. Or if you're just spending hours in Canva, like trying to, or you have this. This is the other thing. If you have this big vision, but you just can't execute it. And again, I would look at where your branding shows up. Look at it on your website. Look at it on your social profiles. If you can't really read your logo in the circle, no one else can either. If
Mm,
those two colours are really, really samey, if you've got white against a really light colour, or your logo is maybe a long sentence that you've squeezed down so you just can't read it, then I would say it's time to kind of look at that. Because
yeah.
when you design a logo, and as well, even in my not basic package, but my entry level to branding, when I do a logo design, it's not just one logo, it's maybe three or four. So you've got something that will suit everywhere it needs to show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is so important to realize that the success of a brand has so many different arms. Like, if you're expecting a brand strategist to be able to solve all of your sales problems, then that's not realistic. But also, if you are expecting to grow a brand that is really recognizable and has this world-class feel, but you're not willing to make sure your branding looks on point, then that's also not feasible either. So
Yeah.
it's really important to look at all the different facets of your business.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you need to look at the areas of your business where you're not the expert, and that's where you invest. And
Mm.
that's exactly what I've done, because I would say, I don't know whether this is because I'm a creative, and I think there's a bit of a stigma that we're people who are creative are a bit scatterbrained and unorganized. And it's correct for me. I am my office. That's why I'm downstairs at the moment. I need to sort it out. So, and also thinking of strategy, your marketing strategy, like where are you what marketing activities are you going to do? So that's where I really struggle. So that's what I'm looking to invest in next. I've been through business coaching to kind of help some mindset shifts, but I'm constantly looking, and investment in yourself, like Rally was an investment in myself. It didn't cost me anything, but it was an investment in my self-development and my confidence. But now I'm thinking, right, I'm going to invest in my business, because I think if you have that feeling inside that tiny little, I can do more, I can just do more, and I
Mm.
want to be a brand owner, and I want to take my message or my product to the world, then it's a no-brainer. You just need to do it. And yeah, I mean, I know some people would say it's interesting actually, because I have worked with coaches in the past who are like, and one in particular, and she was adamant you didn't need any branding or a logo, yet she had one. And I don't know what your thoughts on that are, because I think coaching is, I don't know. Yeah, I was just really surprised by that.
I guess it depends. Like, you don't need anything really, do you? Like, no one needs anything, but it certainly helps to have that visual identity. And even without knowing it, even if you don't have a clear logo, or maybe your typography is all over the place, your branding is still probably the types of things that you normally talk about, or the feeling that people get when they look at your videos that you post online. Or maybe you're the type of coach who doesn't have an online presence because you get so many referrals, so you never really
Yeah,
have to think
yeah,
about your visual branding. But for most people listening to this podcast, and most people who are coaches online, they do have a brand, like whether they know it or
yeah,
not. There's that visual presence, and therefore that is your brand. So are you going to choose to make it cohesive and recognizable, or are you just going to leave it up to chance?
yeah. And also the other thing that I think is, where do you want your brand to go? It's about
Yeah.
your ambition and your growth, because if you're getting one referral every couple of months and that's all you can handle and that's all you ever want, and you're you fill the rest of your time with, you don't necessarily need or want to grow it, then that's fine. It's thinking about, um what is my true ambition for this. And also, it's okay to move in stages, like we've touched on several times. It's overwhelming. Launching a business is overwhelming. You don't need to do a full vision. Not everyone needs a full visual identity, and I will never push a package on somebody that I don't believe needs it. So the three that I offer kind of almost take someone on a journey as well. And if if you don't have huge ambition, and you're um, not that you don't have huge ambition, but you don't want to grow this big brand and you don't have a product, then for some people, just a logo is absolutely fine. But you do need a flexible, again, and also thinking about flexibility right at the beginning just never rules anything out, because I just like to say never say never.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even for those who are listening in and don't feel they need a logo or any branding work done, I'd still encourage you to think about some of the basics, like colors and typography as a bare minimum, because
Yeah,
once you know those two things, it makes it so much easier for everything else. Every time you do like a text only static post on Instagram, you don't have to think, okay, which font am I going to use today? Which color?
yeah,
Like, what's the hex number for this color that I need? If you've got that all laid out, it just saves all of that time and mental energy that it takes to make that decision every time. And
yeah,
also on your website as well. Like, if every time you type something out on your website and you have to think about, oh, what type of imagery am I going to use? Like, what's the vibe that I'm going to craft
yeah.
in this next sales page, then that's just going to take up that extra space and time in your head that you don't really need to spend.
Yeah, it's getting rid of those energy drains, isn't it? Like, I know you've
Yeah.
talked about that. So the energy leaks,
Yeah, yeah,
which I really
absolutely.
love. Yeah, that's a new concept for me, and I love that idea. Just make those little bits of your process that much more easy. The other thing that I would say to pay attention to is negative space or blank space. So I see so many people just trying to cram so much messaging on one small square, and people, honestly, I won't read it. No, I haven't got time to try and figure that out and work out, well, is there
Yeah.
a call to action here? Am I learning anything from this? You need to have a little bit of structure, and just when you've put your post down, then split that up and do it as a carousel. and just give it, just a tiny little bit of text or one word in the middle as the kind of hook to get people to scroll through. So just let the logo or let the graphics breathe. That's another thing where I see it with people I've done their branding for as well in the past, and I'm like, that is, and I've changed the way what I do with the activation bit at the end to give people a really clear guidance on how to use that branding, because if it's not used correctly, it can still look crap.
Yes.
It's really unfortunate. And that there was one, I'm not going to mention who it was, but it was a UK wide brand. And so I saw the website, and again, so I'll do website mock-ups because tech web developer techie guys, they won't necessarily know how to execute the brand. They know how to build a banging website, but they need, like, this is the vibe.
Yeah.
This is how to use those graphics, how to let the negative space do some of the heavy lifting to deliver home the message.
Yeah, absolutely agree that. Like with anything, you can give people all the guidance, but if it's not used in the way that in which it was designed for, then it's just not going to work.
Yeah, and that's when I feel a bit sad. A little bit of designer energy cries.
Oh dear.
I get over it though.
Is there anything we haven't touched on today that you feel listeners would really benefit from?
No, I think the other thing that we sort of talked about in the live that is also really important if you're a personal brand. I recently have done a collaboration with an amazing brand photographer. And again, this is the power of the brands. We were just literally drawn to each other like that because we both serve the same kind of person. And she works with people to really draw out their personality. So they have some photos that they love to use, because you know what it's like, most people just hate having their photo taken and don't want to pose, and then they get them and they don't want to use them. And honestly, her photos are just stunning. So I would say it's just another area that you should consider early on in your journey. And I think, again, there is a way to do it from a cheaper perspective. If you've got an iPhone and a willing partner, friend, parent, just get them to take some nice pictures of you. But if you work with a professional photographer, you're more likely to really end up getting the result you want. But I think if you're a personal brand, then you need to be showing up with your actual face.
Yeah, absolutely. More easy. So if anyone is interested in finding more about how to work with you, or I know you've got a really helpful free guide on your website as well, what's the best way to kind of follow your work and get in contact with you?
I would say either Instagram or LinkedIn. So in fact, Instagram is the easiest way because it's Mad About the Brand. You can just find my profile, and then there's a little link to download the freebie, and you can have the opportunity to join my community where I'm sending out business and brand growth tips, and I try to keep chats about dogs to a minimum. But yes, Instagram is the place you can find me.
Amazing. I'll link to your profile in the show notes here. So I really encourage anyone to go and follow Amy. You give out so many great tips, and your posts are so relatable, which is where I first met you as well and connected with you. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today with us. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? We've only known each other for a few weeks, and I feel like it's just a really strong connection. And again, I think our energy just drew us together. So it's been a pleasure talking.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, I'd be so grateful if you could help me spread the word that this podcast is here to help other female solopreneurs just like you. Please give this podcast show a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe if you'd like to see when future episodes come out. If you have any questions about the topic spoken about today, I'm always happy to answer your questions. Come and find me over on Instagram @TiffanyDawson_ and shoot me a DM. I'd love to help. Until next time, take care.